The do's and don'ts of running for judge in Washington. Did you know there are things I can legally say as a candidate for the Washington State Supreme Court and things I absolutely cannot say? For example, can I explain my judicial philosophy? Yes. Can I tell you how I would rule in a future case? No. Can I discuss the Constitution? Absolutely. Can I promise how I will vote on a future case? Absolutely not. Can I ask you for money? Nope. Can my campaign committee ask you for money? Absolutely. If that sounds confusing, don't worry, you're not alone. The rules governing judicial elections are some of the strangest rules in American politics, and they exist because of our system is trying to accomplish two things at the same time. We want judges to be accountable to the people, but we also want judges to remain impartial. Today, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts for running for judge in Washington State. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why those two goals don't always fit together. I'm Karim Merchant, and I'd be honored to serve as your next Supreme Court Justice. These videos are about constitutional law, civics, and how government is supposed to work. They're for educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as promises about any future case. With that in mind, let's get after it. Do number one, do talk about your judicial philosophy. The first thing candidates can do is talk about their judicial philosophy. This surprises a lot of people. Many voters assume judges aren't allowed to discuss constitutional law. That's not true. In fact, the United States Supreme Court has said voters have a right to hear how judicial candidates think. Are they textualists, originalists, living constitutionalists? Do they believe courts should exercise restraint, or should courts actively shape public policy? These are legitimate subjects for discussion, and they matter because if you're electing someone to interpret a constitution, shouldn't you know how they approach constitutional interpretation? The Supreme Court thought so too. That brings us to don't number one. Don't promise results. There is a line, and it's a big one. You can discuss judicial philosophy. You cannot promise outcomes. I can explain how I think judges should approach constitutional questions. I cannot tell you how I would decide a future case. Why? Because judges decide actual cases, not hypothetical ones. And every case comes with facts, evidence, arguments, and law that deserve independent consideration. The moment a candidate promises a result, they've stopped being a judge and started being a politician. Washington's judicial ethical rules draw that line very carefully. You can explain how you think. You cannot predetermine. Do number two, do build a campaign. The second thing judicial candidates can do is build a campaign. We can have websites, yard signs, mailers, social media, volunteers, endorsements. In fact, we can receive endorsements from individuals, organizations, labor groups, bar associations, newspapers, and community leaders. People often assume judicial candidates aren't allowed to campaign. We are. We're just subject to different rules than everyone else, which brings us to our next don't. Don't number two, don't personally ask for money. This one surprises people. I can run for office, but I cannot personally ask you for campaign contributions. My committee can. I cannot. Now think about that. Why would the law allow me to run for office, but prohibit me from asking for support? The answer is simple, because judges eventually hear cases involving real people, and the law wants to avoid any appearance that money buys influence. Whether that concern is perfectly solved by the rule is a debate for another day. But that's the rule. The committee asks, the candidate doesn't. Do number three, educate the public. This one is my favorite. Judicial candidates can educate the public. That's one of the reasons why I make these videos. The Constitution belongs to the people. The courts belong to the people. And government works best when the people understand how government works. That means we can talk about constitutional history, Supreme Court cases, judicial philosophy, the separation of powers, individual rights, the role of courts in a democratic society. I think that's a good thing because an informed voter is a better voter. Don't number three, don't endorse political candidates. Here's another surprise. Judicial candidates cannot publicly endorse candidates running for non-judicial office. Not governor, not Congress, not state legislature, not county executive. The theory is that judges must remain politically independent. Whether you agree with that rule or not, that's the line Washington has chosen. Judges are expected to stay out of partisan politics, even when they're participating in an election themselves. And that leads us to the biggest idea in this entire discussion, the big tension. Every judicial campaign lives inside a constitutional tension. On the one hand, we elect judges. Elections require speech, debate, discussion, transparency. Voters deserve information. On the other hand, we expect judges to remain impartial, independent, and fair. Those values sometimes pull in opposite directions. The more political a campaign becomes, the harder it can be to preserve public confidence in judicial neutrality. But the less candidates are allowed to say, the harder it becomes for voters to make informed choices. That's the balancing act. And Washington's judicial ethical rules are an attempt to navigate that tension. Not perfectly, not permanently, but thoughtfully. At the end of the day, the rules are actually pretty simple. Do talk about ideas. Don't promise outcomes. Do campaign vigorously. Don't personally ask for money. Do educate the public, remain independent, and never forget that the state of Washington belongs to the people. I'm Karim Merchant, and I'd be honored to serve as your next Supreme Court Justice. If you enjoyed this video, consider following along as we continue exploring constitutional law, civics, and how government is supposed to work. Ballots go out July 17th. See you next time.